Okay, so welcome everyone. Just really excited to have you all here. Indrani and I are going to share about Team CBT and I'm sorry, let me go backwards, and how we're applying it to relationships and couples. Traditionally, Dr. Burns have mainly applied Team CBT to only relationship work for one, where one person is only looking at their part and changing themselves and how they come off to the other person. And often it does create powerful shifts in the whole relationship because if they're willing to change how they come off, how they respond, it totally changes their partner. And at times, I've also seen that we hit a process resistance wall where initially it starts to create change, but then sometimes I've seen my clients say, this starts to feel unfair. I wish my partner could also know some of these tools, that they could also work to use the 5 secrets of effective communication with me. And sometimes they just start to feel a bit resentful or like it's unfair for them to do the soul work to change the relationship. And so I've started to pull in the other partner. A lot of times when I see there's a really low relationship satisfaction and pulling in the other partner and in the past maybe 2 or 3 years, just really shaping this relationship approach to having it work with couples. Okay. So just really excited to share that process with you. My preference is actually working with both people in the room because I just see something powerful when they see we're both in this together, we're a team, and it motivates each other too because it means a lot for them to see the other person's also here, learning these skills, putting in the effort to change themselves. And when I see them doing that work, I feel more motivated to change myself as well. And so ultimately, for long-term change, I've just really loved doing couples work in this process. Okay. And for many people who are new to Team CBT, just looking at the registrations, this has actually been the biggest webinar with 426 registrants, and over half have not been familiar with Team CBT. So that was really exciting to see, but also uh, was my cue to just give a little bit more in-depth information about Team CBT. So just asking for a little bit of grace for those of you who are very familiar with Team, that I just want to give a bit of an overview on what is Team CBT for those of you who are brand new to it. And so Team CBT, TEAM is an acronym that stands for these 4 components that Dr. David Burns have found to be really effective and key into driving change for people. And I'll share with you how we specifically do testing for the relationship work. But testing is just doing measurements. And there's a lot of research now outside of Team CBT on how outcome measures really allows us to see how effective is our work. We may assume that our work is being effective, and ultimately, a lot of therapists actually overpredict how effective our therapy is. And when we do testing, we're actually asking the client because it's their perspective that's more important. And then we'll start to see that, oh, they actually saw the session as less effective than we had hoped for. And we can actually then clearly begin to see change on how did their mood change by the end of the session. And what's cool about Team CBT too is Dr. Burns also assesses how empathic does my client perceive me to be? And it's their perspective that matters because I may have saw myself as very empathic and see us as having a strong therapeutic alliance, but the client may have saw me as not doing as great of a job listening or not doing as great of a job being warm, supportive, or understanding how they're feeling inside. And so in Dr. Burns's brief mood survey, we can quickly assess how was their mood before and after our session. Did our work help to improve their mood? Was our work effective? Because they're also rating effectiveness of the treatment and how helpful it was. And then they're also rating how empathic was my therapist in terms of understanding me, listening to me, giving me warmth and respect. Okay. And even if you don't use Team CBT's brief mood survey, I think it's powerful to just once a month do some verbal testing. And then every week you can just ask them verbally, how are you doing today in terms of depression, 0 to 10? Where's your anxiety? Are you having suicidal thoughts? How are you sensing how helpful the treatment is? And asking verbally may sometimes feel a little bit more awkward, but it's just a space for openness. And what we do know to be true is if you do ask them in writing, they're more likely to just have space to process it. And so that's why I'm talking about that once a month, you can just send out even a Google form. How do you sense our connection? How do you sense me understanding you? And how helpful has therapy been for you? Right? So that's the testing and measurements part. And just really getting the perspective of the client, really giving them a voice about the treatment and how helpful it is. So when I work with couples, I do the brief mood survey with each partner every single week to just see how their mood is. And when their relationship improves, their mood starts to improve as well. And I want to make sure with that feedback form, with the empathy, that they're both feeling that empathy from me, that they're not feeling like, oh, I'm siding with one person or the other. And so that's why I feel like that's so important, is that they both feel a strong alliance with me and that they feel an equal care for both of them. And empathy is just the 5 secrets of effective communication. You'll see it be used interchangeably. When we talk about providing empathy for a client, we're talking about using those 5 secrets. And I'll go a bit more deeply into those and how I add a few more components when I'm working with couples. Okay. We'll go more deeply into addressing resistance. So the A used to stand for agenda setting. So you'll see that sometimes pop up with more of the old school trainers, but now it's just called assessment of resistance, or even shortening it to addressing resistance, where we look at there's always a part of them that comes and wants to change, but there's always another part that may resist change for very good reason. And there's different ways that we can address that resistance to boost motivation to change. And Indrani will even give you a demo of how we address resistance later on in the session. Okay, so my portion of the presentation is about 30 minutes. Indrani's will be about 35 or so, and then she'll do the demo and we'll make some room for Q&A. And then there will be a lot of methods in this process that we won't have time to dive into, but we'll give you some resources if you're wanting a bit more information on some of those methods. And then those methods are just evidence-based methods that we've seen work with our clients. And currently there's actually a baseline, a foundation of 50 variety of methods. But overall, there's really been about 100 TEAM-CBT methods from 12 to 15 different schools of therapy, because Dr. Burns really believes in it's about the tools that work, not really adhering to any kind of school of therapy, because it's actually just being open to many different schools, many different really bright, intelligent people who have contributed to our field, and being open to using whatever works with our clients. So in the relationships tools alone, we'll have, I think in the slide I've shared with you, about 10 different tools that you can learn just for the relationship treatment. Okay. So in terms of testing, we'll use the brief mood survey. Specifically, I really want to see the relationship satisfaction scale. And then oftentimes I'll do some verbal testing as well. How close do you feel to your partner, 0 to 100? What is your goal closeness? And we can also assess anger if they're doing internal work, because a lot of times in relationship work and couples work, anger is a big piece in this, where I've been really hurt, but there's a part of me that just feels really resentful or angry towards my partner. And so that's why I assess not just closeness, but also anger, especially when they're doing internal work. And what we see is when they work to have more empathy for the other person, that empathy can begin to be the antidote to the anger and the resentment that they've been harboring, and just starts to create closeness for them. So that you could see just a brief snippet of the brief mood survey, this is the relationship satisfaction scale. It cost Dr. Burns like over $100,000 just to validate this specific relationship scale alone. And so it's short, but it's actually quite valid, with high validity and reliability in assessing how satisfied are you in your relationship? And I have the clients fill out the whole mood survey, but every session I first ask permission for from each partner that I share openly their relationship satisfaction score. And sometimes they'll surprise each other. Yesterday, I worked with a couple where the man was at 25 on relationship satisfaction. So everything was moderately satisfying for him. And his wife was at a 13, and he was actually surprised about that and didn't realize that she's been feeling quite lonely since he struggled with some depression. He hasn't talked to her as much, and he didn't quite realize how shut down he's been and how much she's missed talking to him. And so just being able to see that allowed him to see, like, oh, her relationship satisfaction was actually dissatisfied in communication and resolving conflicts. Affection and caring was neutral, and intimacy was neutral, but overall, she was really actually experiencing dissatisfaction. And so this alone just helps him to see more clearly, how is my partner perceiving our relationship? And I may even perceive it as better than they did, or we may see that, oh, we're both on the same page or not, right? Okay, so that is testing. Let me see how I'm doing on time. So I have 15 more minutes for an overview. And after Indrani's presentation, we'll make a brief portion for a Q&A just for any clarifying questions on our specific presentation, okay? And so if you have any questions right now, please feel free to just jot them down. And then during that time, you can type them into the chat, or you can open your mic and ask, and we'll make some room for that. And at the very end, we'll have a fuller Q&A as well. Okay, so empathy. This is what we're talking about, using the 5 secrets of effective communication. And if there is a tool that I feel like has been personally life-changing, it's really been learning the 5 secrets of effective communication and really practicing seeing the other's truth. And so for me, disarming has personally shaped me and changed me as a person. And disarming is before I even have that narrative to defend myself or to talk back to the other person. Using this with the client is, let me see your truth. How can I just step into your world and see where you're coming from? And I'm wanting to do that with both people, and in a way that doesn't lead them to feel like, oh, you're siding with them or you're siding with the other person. Disarming is just, so what I'm hearing from you is you're experiencing a lot of hurt and pain. This relationship has been really painful for you. And disarming statements are like, that makes sense. It is painful for us to be in a space where we're disconnected. And I'll draw common links too, where they probably are experiencing a lot of the same things, right? So it's working to see their truth. And if they're both in conflict, like the example that Dan and I will bring up is he's going to play the man, Bob, and I'll be the wife or the partner, Mary. And Bob wants to have another child, but Mary doesn't. Mary's like, I'm done. I'm done. We have one child. It's a lot of work. And I really don't see in myself at, almost 40 that I want to bring in a newborn. Like, I'm done with that portion of my life. And so disarming both of them is just seeing both of their truths, right? So Bob, I'm seeing that it's really important for you to have another child. You've always had a big family, and there's a yearning in there for another child. And what I'm hearing from you, Mary, is like, you're done. That feels so overwhelming to think of bringing in another newborn. Is that what's going on for both of you? And so you could hear both of their truths and to just see from their perspective, right? And I even feel that's like modeling, like, let's slow down. Let's just hear the other person's truth and where they're coming from. And it models for the other person to slow down and hear too, without arguing and inserting their own perspective. It's like, let's just slow down and hear the other first. And feeling empathy and thought empathy is just where you're looking at connecting with what's going on underneath this. And so thought empathy is I'm just repeating some of the things you shared with me so I can make sure you feel heard. Feeling empathy is really looking at what's coming up for you inside. And so for Bob, so this was an actual couple that I worked with. And for Bob, what Mary didn't realize is she has seen him as just like he can't be happy with just her and their only child. He's just even like demanding and kind of like unsatisfied, like he just can't be satisfied with what we have. Why can't he just be satisfied? And for her, she didn't realize a big emotion that he was experiencing was grief. And so when we were doing feeling empathy, we talked about like, yes, he's feeling frustrated, he's feeling unheard, like his needs or his desires for another child doesn't matter. And then as we looked underneath the frustration and some hurt, he said, grief actually makes a lot of sense. That's exactly what I'm experiencing because I'm actually seeing this isn't likely going to happen. And I'm grieving the vision of having more than one child. I'm grieving a bigger family and the joy that that had brought me in our upbringing. And so for her to be able to be in touch with his grief, that began the process of empathizing with him a little bit more. He's not just entitled, he's not just being selfish about what he wants, but this was something that's always been close to his heart and important to him. And feeling empathy for her, he had only heard her shut him down every time he brings it up. She would kind of criticize him. Why would you want that? You don't know how hard it is for me. I just can't go there. And he didn't realize underneath her upset and her asking, why can't you be happy with us? Is she was actually feeling deeply hurt and even inadequate. I'm not enough. Our current child is not enough for you. And in that, she was feeling quite wounded in this, like, I'm not enough as is. And so just doing the 5 secrets with them begins this modeling empathy, modeling listening process for them. And then the I feel statement is traditional uh, Team CBT's 5 secrets, right? Where you're just having them share some of their feelings. I'm also just if you're doing this as the therapist, learning the 5 secrets for the couple, sometimes you may share your feelings. So if you're seeing this, like I have then seen like both of their tears in this moment as they're talking about this, and then I could share like I'm really feeling some sadness to see they've both been feeling really lonely. And it is very moving when we get into the heart of things that they're not just wanting to hurt each other and to be so disconnected. A lot of times they're really yearning to connect. They're yearning to feel heard and to feel seen. And when we can get them to that space where those harder feelings, those protective parts of them can relax back, where they're not just angry, defensive, yelling, blaming. You can see this vulnerable piece where it's like, I actually really yearn to connect. I've been feeling lonely. I've actually really missed you. And so we, as the therapist, can share our feelings, and that just helps us to be more human. And when we teach them communication, we're teaching them to share from what's going on inside as well, sharing their feelings instead of just addressing the other person's behaviors or being defensive. But in this, I'm just sharing how you, as a therapist, can provide more empathy for the couple, for both people. And so you could share your feelings, but what I'm seeing takes it to another level is doing some self-disclosure. And so you can share your feelings on, I feel sad to hear how lonely you both have been. But self-disclosure, I feel like, takes it to another level. And if you can even just imagine doing work with your therapist, and your therapist begins to share, like, I've been there too. I've had moments of such disconnect with my husband that it's been really lonely. And it's quite painful in that a lot of times we show our anger, but in these moments, you could just feel the emptiness in the room and you feel the loneliness in that. And I know how personally painful that is. Is that how it's feeling like for you? And so I'm sharing my personal experience, but I'm also bringing it back to them to not just make it about myself, but to make a common link. I'm human too. I've struggled with my husband too. There are moments I want to wring my husband's neck. I may share that. I may share, there are moments where I felt embarrassed about how my anger comes out in our relationship. And I'm hearing that you're angry, but you also feel shame about how it comes out. Is that how it's feeling like for you? And just imagine that and see how that impacts you. How do you feel then when your therapist actually self-discloses their own relationship struggles, or, my struggle with my mom, and just how that impacts you? If you're feeling shame about your anger, or if you're feeling shame about the fights that you're having. And I share with you, I've struggled too in my own marriage. Relationships can be so hard. I'm wondering if it's just felt really challenging for the both of you as well, right? How that impacts you. Okay. And then stroking or affirmations is where you just make a point to point out their strengths, to point out the good that you see in them. How Dr. Burns words this is conveying warmth and respect, even in the heat of the moment. So even when like a client is criticizing you or they're really struggling, you can still point out the good in them. And so for me, when I'm working with a couple, I just really always want to make a point, even during the empathy portion, to just point out, like, I just really appreciate you both being here because this is hard work. And I know how vulnerable it is. I could imagine how vulnerable it is to bring your relationship to therapy. That's not ideal. That's not what anyone wants. But I just really admire that you're here doing this work. And then taking it to another level is identifying their good intentions. This will really also set up the positive reframing that Indrani will demonstrate with you all, because identifying their good intentions could be, let's say I'm working with Bob and Mary, and Bob is saying, like, all she does is just shut me down every time I bring up a second child and how much that would mean to me. She's just like, I can't go there. Why do you keep bringing this up? How could there be a good intention for these two people, right? And so I may say something like, Mary, I notice, it's hard for you when Bob brings up the second child topic. And so you respond, what he's saying is then you just shut it down. And he's saying that's actually really hurtful. That's making him feel more lonely. But I could imagine that's not your intention. You weren't trying to hurt Bob or make him feel lonely. I could see in this moment, maybe you're actually just trying to really have your voice be heard. You're trying to express, like, this is too hard for me. You're trying to have a voice. You're not actually trying to hurt him. Am I hearing that right? And so I'm trying to identify her good intention and just imagine how that could impact them, how that impacts her. She's not someone who's just the bad guy trying to be mean, trying to hurt him, because sometimes they see their partner perceives them that way, right? You're just the bad guy. You're just being selfish. You're just trying to hurt me. You just shut me down. But I'm going to point out your good intention and see if that lands with you. And then for Bob, it's like, um, and I hear from you, you're also really trying to have a voice about how much this means to you. You're not trying to make life harder for Mary, because sometimes she's just so overwhelmed by this conversation that she's talked about. This is suffocating when he keeps bringing up the second child. I just can't. And I'm seeing, like, your intention is you're also just trying to share how much this means to you. You're trying to feel heard around that. Is that right? You're not trying to suffocate her or overwhelm her. And then again, this is also modeling. Can they begin to see their partner from a different perspective? So let me see the good in you when they're seeing you as evil or the bad guy, because I think we've all been there when we're in it, in the midst of it with our partners, a good friend or a parent. It's like you almost see them from this lens of, like, you're this kind of ugly, scary monster that's just trying to hurt me and it's off-putting. And then we're trying to shift them into a lens of seeing their partner as human, a human being with needs, a human being with trying to express something where they're really trying to feel heard and seen and cared about, right? Because I think that's actually our ultimate deeper needs here. And so the inquiry is then I'm asking them questions to understand them better. That helps each person feel like, hey, I have space to have a voice and to feel heard. And taking this to the next level is let's ask about their needs, their hopes, and their fears. And again, this is modeling not just asking the other person questions, but modeling like curiosity and seeing the other person as, again, a human being with needs. What is it that you're needing in this moment when you are actually defensive or angry? I'm actually really needing to feel heard, right? I'm really needing to feel seen. I'm needing to feel cared about, like that you see me and that you see my needs and that I matter. What is it that you're hoping for in this work together? What is the hopes of this part of you that gets defensive, right? Well, the hope is that maybe somehow I could find some kind of words to really have the other person see my perspective. And my deeper hope is actually to just connect and to be with my partner again in a way where we're not just at each other's throats. And then we can ask them more about fears. What are your fears if you continue to keep this up? What are your fears if you continue to be in conflict for 3 years about this second child conversation? And you can even ask, what are the fears if you don't continue to get defensive, right? What are the fears if you don't continue to bring up this conversation? I'm afraid then I'll completely lose myself, or I'll lose my voice, or the other person will never see me or hear my needs. We'll be stuck like this forever. And when we dive into asking about needs, hopes, and fears, you'll actually see they are so much more similar than they are different. And they'll start to see that too. Oh, we have the same needs and we hope to connect. And our fears is actually not being heard and ultimately losing ourselves or losing each other in this process, losing the relationship, losing the connection. And then you'll see how much it means to both of them. All right, so that was my 30 minutes. Indrani will dive into more deeply on addressing resistance. But what I want to point out for those of you who are new to Team CBT is we have two forms of resistance that we see in any client or in the couple. And there's process resistance and then there's outcome resistance. Process resistance is what do they need to do to make therapy successful that a part of them just doesn't want to do? And when we're working with couples in relationships, a lot of times it's, I really don't want to solely focus on myself because that's really hard work. And that's what we're going to ask of them, that they're each willing to solely focus on their part, how they're coming off, how they're responding, that's creating the disconnect. And if they're both willing to do that, it's going to change their whole relationship. So how we address process resistance is just what I said, that's dangling the carrot. While this is going to be painful, gentle ultimatum is I'm going to have each of you solely focus on your part. Of course, you'll have space to share how the other person's impacting you. You'll have space to share how you're perceiving the other person. But once we dive into the work, the gentle ultimatum is I'm going to have each of you solely focus on being aware of how you come off and shifting yourself, how you're coming off, how you're responding. And I could imagine that's painful because it's so much easier to actually see the mistakes that the other person's making. But if you're willing to do that, and this is dangling the carrot, it's going to change your whole relationship. I believe we could really get your relationship to the space of where it's been that you're missing, but maybe even better, where you've been yearning for it to be, and even better, where you're closer, you're connecting again, you're not at each other's throats, and you're communicating in a way where you're feeling heard and cared about, right? So I'll dangle the carrot. I'll use some of their words because dangling the carrot, the more specific the carrot, the more it'll resonate with the clients. So the carrot is just what is it that they're really wanting, that they're really yearning for, that we can deliver. And that instills hope. And when you can share with them really clearly what it is that you need from them, for them to solely focus on shifting themselves, and you can deliver that change is possible. That's dangling the carrot. It's going to instill hope, and that will begin to boost motivation and change. And to just really see process resistance really needs to be addressed from the very beginning. What do they need to do in order to make therapy effective and successful, and instill hope from the beginning too? And that's when we get into the treatment, we look at the miracle cure question, but we look at it even more deeply, not just what you both are wanting. So if this therapy was really successful and you get the change you're looking for, what is it that you're really wanting to see? What change would you really love to have in your relationship? And Dr. Heather Clegg has one of our awesome TEAM-CBT trainers have also added this upward arrow in order to really connect with their values. And why would that matter to you that you're communicating again? And so they may start to say, like, if we could communicate again, then it'll feel like we're a team. And why would that be important to you? Why would that be meaningful to you to have that? Well, if we're a team again, then our house is more peaceful versus in conflict. And you know, what matters the most is that our son can see us get along. Our son can see what it means to be loving instead of bickering. And what would that mean to you? To have a peaceful household where your son is seeing what love looks like versus bickering. And they would say things like, that would mean everything. This is what we're working for. And so you can see when it dives deeper into values, it's going to drive motivation to change. And so that's why that upward arrow really enhances the miracle cure question. And I love that. So yeah, I'm giving lots of props to Dr. Heather Clegg for that process. And I've just seen it to be very powerful when we add that. Lots of emotions, lots of tears. A lot of times when we get to, why does this matter? What would that mean to you? And just keep going with it. Indrani will also show when we address resistance, we also talk about the cost of change. I'm just briefly mentioning that right now because she'll dive a lot more into it. And then outcome resistance is just they're wanting to get closer, right? Like that's the outcome that they're saying they're wanting. We want to get closer. We want healthier communication. But there would be another part of them that may actually prefer yelling at their partner. And you may relate to this, right? Like, of course, I want to model healthier communication. I want a more peaceful household. But there are times I don't want to get closer to my husband. I may actually prefer to tell him that he's just being a jerk right now. And that's what we're going to really address with the positive reframing and everything else. So I'm going to hand it over to Indrani because she has a lot more specifics with all of these points. And then we'll do the positive reframing demo. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Diane. I tell you, each time I hear Diane, I just not only learn more, but also get inspired. And you know, Diane is world famous. I'm not, so I'm just going to take a second to introduce myself.
Yes.
My name is Indrani Mookerjee. I am a therapist from Maryland, and I have, you know, learned at Diane's feet, and of course, Dr. Burns, who is our overall guru. And I just wanted to tell you that uh, for the newcomers to team, that you know, the team CBT is life changing. It transformed my personal you know, interactions in a personal life, but also of course professionally has been just absolutely amazing. And I just wanted to kind of, you know, mention here that we have a model because, you know, we forget that we are a sub. Okay, you can just mute yourselves. I think Jenny is unmuted.
All right. Indrani, if you could unmute yourself. Unfortunately, when I mute all, it also
Okay,
mutes you.
I think, yeah. No worries. The team model is, is a um, well-tested, highly validated model. At the same time, it's not manualized treatment. It is very customized, and the goal for these specific steps that it has to be done in a specific order, specific steps, kind of follows the way medicine works, right? If you go to a doctor and they check blood pressure and pulse and this and that, and if there's something out of the ordinary, then we get medication based on that data. And the goal is to have specific steps with measurement that are replicatable. So, this, when we see a couple in our office, this is not the first time they fought. It won't be the last. But the hope is that it gives them enormous hope when they know that they have they have tools that they can replicate over and over again throughout their lives. So just wanted to put that out there, just to tell you how life-changing this has been for me. Diane will mention that at the end, is that not only how I know this works, because my patients, I've seen that with my patients and their outcomes, but I've seen it in myself too. There are two podcasts on the feelinggood.com website that actually has me, and it was transformative, using exactly these steps that Diane laid out, and that I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. And I feel great passion for this work. So my part is to focus on the positive reframe part, which is a portion of the assessment of resistance. Now we've gotten here after we've done the testing, we've seen the relationship scale, and like Diane, I do give have the couple do the brief mood survey in its entirety. All of the mood metrics and the happiness and then the relationship scale, and of course the evaluation of the therapy session. So we've been through that. We've done the testing. I've gotten A+ empathy scores from both partners. And now we are at the first step of addressing the resistance, right? And in the team world, resistance is a good word. Resistance provides, is protective. It honors that part of us that doesn't want to change, and there are some good reasons to do that. So it's not sort of, oh, secondary gains, or sometimes I've heard such derogatory terms used for this. It's none of the above. We all have that, no matter what we are trying to change. If anyone's ever tried to lose weight, you know what I'm talking about. Part of us wants to, the other part really doesn't. So that's the part we honor in this step, and that, I think, is the genius of TEAM. That it's method agnostic, but certainly the resistance is a game changer. So after the empathy and the testing and empathy are done, and then we have the invitation step. So I will ask my patients, is this a good time to kind of dive in to do the active work of fixing the relationship? Because by then they have told me that they actually want to fix the relationship. And if they say no, then we click back and go back to empathy. If they say yes, then we go to the next step, and that is the specificity step, which we do in the relationship journal. And for those of you that are not familiar with it, let me just screen share that. Can you all see this? Everyone can see? Okay. So, the relationship journal has 5 steps. So the specificity would be a specific moment in time when they were feeling pretty disconnected from one another, quite angry with each other, very angry with each other, whatever caused them to come in. And I asked them to kind of set the scene for me, and they give me some details, and that's what we put in the event or the event box. And then step 1 is what he or she said, how they felt, what did I say, how I felt, and then we go to, well, was this an example of good communication or bad communication? And that is defined right here for us. And then we go to step 4, which is, so what happened? Did things get better or worse between the two of you? And 100 times out of 100, things got better. And then I asked them, "Oh, why? What happened?" Well, she stormed off, or he shut down, or we just changed the subject and talked about something else, etc. And then I go to the errors. So let's see what happened. What were the errors that you may have made, that caused you to have, you to feel disconnected? And one of the things that I kind of normalize this, and I tell people that we call them, this is actually, we call them common errors. And they're common because we all make those errors. I mean, God knows that I've made, 18, there are 18 errors here. Diane has added 5 more. And if there were 5 more, even beyond that, I would have made them all on a pretty regular basis. So this is very common. We all do it. And that's why we know that they exist, right? It's just that universal. And so each partner has checked off these errors. And when they come, so where I'm going to pick up from, you just stop sharing. Where I'm going to pick up from for my part here is now both partners have come in. Steps 1 through 4 are done. Both of them have checked off all of their communication errors. And this is where they are sort of sitting right now. And at that point, I will, I ask them that, you're, you sort of identified these errors, and sort of use the 5 secrets. 5 secrets are woven. Empathy is woven into the entire process of Team CBT. No matter what we are doing, whether we are doing mood work or relationships or habits, it's woven into every step of Team CBT. So I will, offer some empathy, and then I ask them that, tell me, and then take some measurements. So how close are you feeling right now? And they may have started with 20% close, and generally after this step, the closeness generally kind of dials up. Sometimes not by much, but I've noticed a dialing up because um, for a couple of reasons. One is that they are feeling fair, pretty safe with me. They're giving me good empathy scores. They're feeling connected to me. They're feeling safe, and they're feeling pretty safe to be vulnerable, right? So now they can see, yeah, that's right. I was defensive, or I was kind of being a little demanding, and so on. So I take some measurements at that point, and then and I have to just that's true. Yes, that is true. I just looked at the chat. That my relationship journal is on the podcast. I tell my patients, that don't fire me. Listen to both parts 1 and 2. because you'll see that we are, human experience is universal. We have more in common than we don't. And at this point, I will introduce the magic button. And just to give props to Tyann here, this entire portion is what Tyann has come up with. Of course, it builds on Dr. Burns, but this is very unique to her approach, and it has worked enormously well for me. And so I have kind of, I incorporated that and now feel like I own it. So I will offer the magic button, which for team we do for mood work. When you have anxiety and depression, when we come to this step, that's what we do. And here I will say, if I had a magic button, and if you could push this button, and these errors would kind of magically go away, and you would kind of break free of these patterns that gotten yourselves into, where maybe he shuts down and you become demanding, and then he sort of maybe invalidates you, or avoids you. If you could get rid of all of that and become close, would you push that button? And to be honest, I've never had anyone say that, no, I won't. So far, I don't know what's coming up in the future, but so far everybody's like, yeah, we're absolutely, because we feel disconnected. It's lonely. I just feel miserable when we are fighting and upset with one another. And I'm like, absolutely. At that point, I will do some self-disclosure and validate them. And I'm like, absolutely, I would too. I feel miserable when I'm fighting with my husband, and I don't like that feeling. At the same time, I just want to make sure that these errors don't have any positives for you, because we want to just check and see if there are any benefits to you from making these errors, because generally these tend to be protective. They are, when we make errors, it's our way of saying something and making ourselves heard. Now, granted, it's not that effective, but we want to make sure that we uncover that, and also look at the core values, the beautiful values that are reflected in them. I just wanted to just also tell you that Dr. Burns talks about sort of the dark side of human nature, which is 100% true. Look at the wars that are going on all over the world right now. We're kind of built to fight almost. At the same time, uh, Tyann has introduced to me a sort of a philosophical shift in this approach, and that is absolutely, there is the dark side, no doubt about that, but then there is a good side also. And this kind of points us in that direction to see the good, that we all desire closeness, that we all want connectedness. We just don't know how to get there. And so this sort of speaks directly to that what does it, what are the errors saying about me, and how does it help me? And it's not because I'm not making the errors because I want to hurt the other person, or sort of bring them down or escalate the fight. That's not the reason. There's some really good reasons why these errors come up. And so we start, we sort of move in that direction, and then what I do is I just do it sort of the pen and paper way. You can be more high tech if you want. And I'm like, yeah, let's just pull out your notebooks, draw a line down the middle, and write down. Let's see what does, and I'm writing or typing right along with them. In the Bob and Mary example that that we'll demo, we'll see about 3 errors, but like I said, there are about 23, and I will, start writing them down, and I will start with I don't know if that is. Oh yeah, sorry. Thank you, Diana. I forgot about my slides. I got so carried away. Let me share my slide while I.
Yeah, sorry. I was just asking Andrani. I didn't know if we were supposed to see your PowerPoint slides at this time because
I
I know
was
you had
it
portions on the
yeah,
button.
yes, I do have my PowerPoint. Let me see. Give me a second here. I know it's part of the handout as well. So let me see. Let me just give me 1 second and I will pull it up. Um,
And sorry to interrupt your flow. I just didn't know if we were supposed to
no,
be seeing it now because I know you
yeah,
had content about
yes,
everything
yes,
that you're
yes, no,
sharing.
yes, yes, no, please, absolutely. I want to share. Can you see my slides?
I can't see them.
You cannot see them. Okay, let me try one more time. I don't want to.
Mhm. And I do have your slides here as well, Indrani. I don't know if it's helpful if
If
I
you
share
can
them
share, then
and
yeah,
you
I
tell
think
me when
so.
to move on. Okay.
Yeah, I think we are on 13.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what I will, yeah, there you go. Yes,
Sorry, let me switch
we
this
can do, I think that works. Let's see, let's do the 13. Let's do 14.
here.
Yeah, the one before that. Yeah, that's good. Okay, perfect. So what I will do is I will start with the errors that are overlapping, and generally a bunch will overlap. For a list of errors, I shared that on the relationship journal with you. Um, uh, it's also in Dr. Burns's Feeling Good Together book, but you will what we find is that there are a bunch of overlapping errors, and I start there. So I might say, Mary, you've checked off truth. Tell me what benefits does truth have? How would you say it helps you? And she might say, well, truth gives me a voice. It helps me to be heard. I want him to know how this has been feeling. Um, and I'm like, wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I will sort of deepen that. I will ask, tell me more. Why is it important for you to be heard? Well, what does that mean for you? It means that I want him to I want him to know how I feel, but I also want him I want to feel respected. Respect is important, and that and then I will kind of reinforce that, and I will say, I know that, yeah, absolutely. So respect is an important value for you. Yeah, and then she might say, you know what, and I want accountability. It's not fair that he can do whatever he wants, and then he asks me to sort of stay home and take care of the of all the housework, and now he's telling me that he wants another baby. Now, where's the accountability? Like, wow, that is makes so much sense, because it shows that you have this really, really kind of sacred value, and that is of accountability. And then I will go back to Bob and I'll say, Bob, what is it? How do what is it like for you to hear that what Mary is actually trying to tell you is that she wants her voice to be heard, and that she wants to be respected. And generally, and you'll see this a little bit more in the demo, and generally Bob will actually, you know, um, will sort of agree. Generally, people will say, "Oh yeah, I feel the same way. I absolutely feel the same way." And if I think at that point that I've gotten most of the benefits and values from Mary, I will move on to Bob, and I'll ask Bob, what about you? Tell me what your what are some of the advantages, or how does truth help you? How does this era protect you? Um, and it's so interesting, this step, because they will start to, you really see a softening at this point, because a lot of times this is the first time that the couple sees each other as being vulnerable. They see that it's not just the anger, it's not just the defensive emotion. There are all this tenderness underneath, that I want to be respected, I want to be seen, I want to be heard. I'm just keeping an eye on the time, Diane. After that, the next step, once I get a good, a sense of a good amount of information on the benefits and values of all of their errors, I will then go on to the cost of change. And that is, as Diane explained, the process resistance portion. That's great. You want to feel close, you want to feel connected, but what do you have to give up to get that? What do you have to do that you don't want to do? And they might say, yeah, might have to give up defensiveness, and that's hard. I might have to look at my own role in this. Um, and once, they'll come up with some good reasons, why this change will be difficult. And I'm just enumerating this at this point. The next step after that is to ask the pivot question, right? Is that, given in these errors, why would you want to give it up? And generally, they will tell me what's to the need in it. They'll say, no, it doesn't feel good. It's fine. It's great to be right. It's good to win this fight, but I feel miserable afterwards. Or, it's not a great example for our kids. And when they're saying this, I'm writing or typing frantically. At this point, what is really happening is that they're beginning to argue for change. And this is a distinct step. It's called voicing the resistance. As soon as I ask the pivot question and they tell me why they want to change, I will then go through every single, each one of the benefits and values of each one of the errors, and kind of just voice their resistance. And they kind of come back with the good reasons that they have to change. And what comes out of that is what Diane calls a motivation script. A motivation script, the way I do it is I actually have them recorded on their phones, and so that they can have it and they can listen to it. And once we develop a motivation script, I'll re-rate their motivation to change again, take some measurements, and their measurements generally are significantly higher. So if they started out, the beginning of this process at about 60 or 70, they will go to over 1995. Most of the times it's 100. And then as homework, I will tell them, go ahead, listen to your motivation script and tell me, what were the highlights? What caused you to what caused this motivation to dial up from 60 or 70 to 100? Well, what were the important points there? and they come up with that. So this is sort of the assessment of resistance step. I think it's absolutely the most critical step in the entire, I mean, we just can't skip over it. If we skip over it, that would be a huge error. Um, and this really melts away the resistance, and they're completely ready then to deploy the 10 or more relationship tools that will get us and get them to that amazing outcome. Just a note of caution to the therapists is that fidelity to the model is key, and I always want to make sure that the outcome is spectacular, no doubt about it, but we just want to make sure that we are diligent in going through each one of the steps and teaching our clients how to use them so that they can replicate it. So I think my part is done, Diane. Um, and if anyone has any burning questions, we can, I guess, spend 5 or 6 minutes answering them.
Yes, thank you so much, Indrani, for the overview of outcome resistance. And we will have Indrani bring it to life as well with the demo. But just wanting to leave about 5 to 6 minutes, any burning questions specifically on the content that's been presented to just get a bit more clarity. I've taken notes of a couple of questions here, Indrani. One asked, do they fill the relationship journal together or individually?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the way I do it is that at the invitation step, I ask for a volunteer, somebody who wants to go first, who wants to be on the hot seat first. And whoever volunteers, they go first. The other person is, an active spectator while they he and I or she and I are filling it, and then I repeat it with the other person. So that's the process that I use. I don't know, Tyann, if you want to just
Yes, and another
say a
one
little bit.
asked if they could see where the additional 5 communication errors are.
Aha! Go January. Wait till January, you will get all that and more. Tyann is going to talk about this at the end. Yeah. There's magic then, and there's gold, golden magic.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we'll definitely have resources to provide more of those additional communication errors. But one of our resources that we've linked included the Feeling Good podcast that I was on with Dr. Burns. And that one, he actually did list the additional 5 that I've added. And so you're welcome to check that out. I'll send that in the link, and it's also linked in your slides. And as Indrani had shared, she's done personal work with her daughter. That's on 2 episodes and an update. So a total of 3. That's really worth listening to, seeing how the relationship model all comes together. It doesn't have our additional components here on the positive reframing and addressing resistance, but it also shows just the basics alone can already be quite helpful, right, Indrani?
Yeah. Yeah, Tyann, some of the questions are kind of coming hot and heavy. So I'm just going to ask, yeah. I mean, if there's still 1 or 2 burning questions, be happy to answer. But if you guys want to just make a note of them, we'll do our best to address it at the end. And then if we still, if we run out of time, I think both of us might be available. I know I will be to do it offline as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that sounds good, just to make sure there's enough time for the demo. Lots of great questions, though, that we'll do our best to get to by the end.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is now going to be the demonstration of just the specific outcome resistance tools, positive reframing. You can look at your handout that we've sent. It has the vignette of me the couple that Dan and I are going to be playing. And then it has the communication errors, just three of them. Usually I actually don't even identify more than 3 to 5 because you'll see it's typically the same patterns, the same cycles over and over. And Indrani will bring to life how, after they've now identified their communication errors, how she will do positive reframing and voicing the resistance.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
so I'm just looking for Dan. Dan, can you speak up just so
Yeah.
we could easily
Hey,
find you?
There you go.
how are you?
Okay, and then I'll pin you as well.
Awesome. What to do? Yep. All
There's
right.
my
Where is
husband,
Dan?
just for today.
I'm right here.
Yeah. Okay. Can you pin him?
Yeah, can you all see the three of us being pinned there?
I still don't see Dan.
You don't? Okay, mine
I
says
do
pin has been
not.
added.
Okay.
Okay, let me just see how Spotlight works.
Ah, yes. Yes.
Okay,
Now it's
maybe
perfect.
I'll
Okay,
try
perfect.
Spotlight instead of pinning. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Good, good, good. Oh, this is absolutely perfect.
Okay,
Wonderful.
good. Okay,
Yes.
and let me
Um,
see. I'm just
Lovely.
checking the view for the recording. Okay. So I'm trying this multi-speaker view for the recording. We'll see how it shows up. All
A
right.
lot of Dan fans here, so
Yeah. Go Dan. Dan is my
go
good
Dan.
friend. He's a Team CBT therapist based in New Jersey, and he's the owner of Cognitive Change. So just really appreciating him volunteering to do this. He's also already gone through the relationship course, is familiar with this process. I want to give lots of props to Indrani. We talked about all good things in life comes with a little bit of nausea. And I know doing demos and putting yourself out there is a little bit nauseating. It's a bit anxiety
Yeah,
provoking. So just appreciating you doing this. And I know you're passionate about this work, have seen a lot of effectiveness with it. And Johnny's going to put on a consultation group for this specific process. And when she's helped me to lead the practice groups, just has had a lot of really positive feedback on her clarity, her guidance for people through this process, and her passion. So I'm excited to have you help us bring this tool to life, Indrani. And you can dive in
and
whenever you're ready.
I'm excited to work with you guys, and of course, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Tyann. And yeah, so we already have the vignette. I don't know, Tyann, if you quickly want to just set it up. Just,
Mhm.
I think this is a real life patient. I mean, all the particulars have been disguised, but if you want to just set this person up.
Yeah, so this is pretty much the case that I had shared through my example with my
Okay,
presentation. So
okay, okay.
Dan's going to play Bob and I'm going to be Mary. And we've
Yeah,
been married for about 10 years and just having this conflict in the past 3 years as our son Kenny has turned 4. And Dan's really feeling the urgency of wanting a second child as they're both aging past their um, mid 30s, approaching early 40s. And so this has just been the conflict for several years before they came to me for couples therapy. Any
yeah.
other information that's needed about that, Indrani?
No, I see. No, it's perfect. I mean, it's all in the vignette as well. I just wanted to make sure that we had everything. And so, yeah. So Dan and Mary, thank you for coming. And we've been working um for a couple few weeks, and I just wanted to tell me. I see your relationship journal here, but that you were discussing having a second child last Wednesday during dinner. So, uh, no, you're Bob. You're not Dan. Okay, Bob. Um, can you tell me what you said during
Yeah,
dinner?
it's right. It's just kind of the same conversation it's been where, I try to just kind of want to talk about it. Just want to talk about maybe having another child, and it just gets shut down. It just gets dismissed. It's just really, really, I just get really frustrated, and then I just act how I don't want to be acting. It's just a real mess.
I see that looking at your relationship journal, and I see that, and I'll just let you, Mary. What did you say in response to that when Dan told you that he didn't want that he really wanted another child and really wanted a big family, and Kenny needs a sibling, and why can't you even consider this option instead of shutting down? Can you tell me what you said?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same cycle again for us where I honestly like feel so overwhelmed and panicked. And I say something like, you have no idea how hard the work has been for me with Kenny. I just get kind of defensive and critical, I think. I've done all the drop-offs, breastfeeding, nighttime care, and I just don't want that life again. I was a zombie, so I'm just wondering, like, why can't you just be happy, with just the three of us? It's just so much.
It's pretty painful. When we get into these patterns and these patterns of conflicts. And I'm looking at your errors, and Bob, you've checked off truth, and defensiveness, and blame, and Mary, you have truth, defensiveness, and shut down. So you have a few overlaps. And so I would love to hear from you, Bob. When you checked off that error of truth, where you kind of standing in your truth, you're insisting that you're right, and Mary is wrong in that moment. What are some of the benefits of that error, would you say?
Well, I mean, I think that it's important to know exactly what happened. Otherwise, what are we fighting about? You know,
Mm,
um,
mm,
so I feel like there's got to be some kind of actual, I don't know, some kind of agreement on what actually happened, or what, like, because we'll fight and then we'll fight about fighting, and that kind of, you know, that's what I think the truth is important to know, that like, no, you did say that, right?
yeah. So is it, yeah, wow. So it's sounding like it's really important for you uh, to be heard, to know, uh, you know, why you're having this argument. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, wow. So kind of having a voice, wanting to be heard.
Definitely.
Yeah. Mary, what's it like for you to hear Bob say that?
Mhm. Um, yeah, I mean, that makes sense since I also have truth on mine. And like in that moment, I'm like desperately wanting him to see my perspective too, and I guess he's doing
Yeah,
the same thing.
yeah. Absolutely. It's that you're both saying kind of the same thing, right? That both of you want the other to see your perspective, and to feel heard. Um, and yeah, and Bob, what would you say, what's a value, what's a core value that, that is it's important to you, that is coming up in this era?
Hmm. What's important? I mean, that's what's interesting is when I checked it off, I didn't even look at it as an error, because truth is important, And I have the belief that if we keep talking about it over and over and over and over and over again, then it will eventually will have the same truth. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So there is sort of not only that you'll both see it the same way, but maybe sort of a that integrity or being truthful is important. Would that
yeah,
be? Yeah.
right.
Uh, yeah. And so when you uh, when you are, sort of wanting, you're standing, your ground, so to speak, you want to be heard. Um, how do you think that might impact Mary? Because what you're saying is making a lot of sense to me.
Uh, well, I mean, then it becomes where she feels like I'm not listening and just thinking of just my side of it. I guess that's the problem, as I don't, you know, I do want to know her side. If she just let me talk for, a minute, I would gladly hear her side, but I think we just cut each other off and, it just goes down a bad rabbit hole.
Yeah. And that and maybe that's what makes you and Mary sort of get stuck in that loop of that pattern that we had talked about, uh, where the conflict kind of continues without without really resolving, and neither and both of you feeling pretty disconnected. Would would that be I mean, is that, tell me if that's your experience, or is there something else?
You're,
Are you guys, who are you asking?
Yeah,
were you
yeah,
asking if that's my experience of it, Indrani?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Do you
mean,
feel like that?
mhm.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, my experience of it is just he only shares his perspective, and then um we've been in this loop. He shares his perspective, his truth, I share mine, and we're both getting defensive, and then I ultimately shut down. That's been our cycle.
And that's been your cycle. Yeah, and I love what you're saying, Mary, because that's exactly, how I'm also sensing it. Plus, you have also checked off, both of you have checked off defensiveness, and you've shared, you said that there are some advantages or protective factors of truth, and there's some values that are being respected, of I mean that are being reflected, like integrity, and maybe respect, or your voice, having a voice, needing to be heard. um, uh, uh, and if you go down and look at defensiveness, Mary, what do you think some of the benefits are to you about defensiveness?
Mhm. I guess I just want to, because you said protection, it's like,
Yeah,
when he just sees me as like a bad person, I just get defensive. And so I'm trying to protect myself from being seen as that bad person.
yeah, yes, absolutely. And does it, so it's almost sounding like you not only, it protects you from being seen as a bad person, but also probably protects you from being uh, attacked, or pushed back on by Bob as well. Uh,
Yeah,
There's the
that's
defensive,
true.
yeah,
Yeah. Protect me from getting hurt or feeling attacked by him, because oftentimes when he's sharing this, it's like I'm the thing getting in the way of his happiness, instead of like I'm a part of his happiness.
I feel sad hearing that, because I've worked with you guys and like you guys enormously, and I can't imagine that either one of you is a bad person. And I just want to check in with you, Bob, and see what was that like for to hear Mary say that she wants to protect herself from feeling like you're getting in the way of your happiness, but she's, doesn't want to. Yeah.
That's hard to hear. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. It just, um, I guess I didn't really, know that, so, but it makes sense. I can also relate to, maybe I do that too a little bit, like with my defensiveness, so we're both kind of not being vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the benefits to you then is that you don't have to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And why would that be, uh, why would that be difficult for you? Would you, uh, you know, why would you want to sort of shield yourself or not be vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that knowing she might shut down just kind of makes me think like, I don't know, it's too risky to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels risky. Yeah. Absolutely. Mary, what's that like for you to hear Bob saying that, he doesn't want to, it's risky to feel vulnerable because he doesn't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
What's that like for you to hear that?
I guess I can relate. We're both
Yeah.
angry and defensive instead of vulnerable. And I guess we've both been hurt, haven't we? Been feeling hurt.
Right, right. It's almost like safer, right, to be defensive and angry than actually show our tender feelings or vulnerable feelings of hurt or loneliness or even anxiety or
Yeah.
so I can surely relate to that as well.
I'm gonna screen share. Sorry, just stepping on a roll for a second. Just
Yeah,
gonna screen share so people can see what you're
yeah,
doing, Johnny.
yeah,
Some
yeah,
people may find it helpful to see a visual.
absolutely. And they also have it in their handouts, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, so Mary, you have shut down as an error as well.
Mhm.
So, tell me what are some protective, factors or ways that shutdown helps you in those moments of when you're in the heat of battle?
Mhm. Oh yeah, when I shut down, it's like that's my safe space. I don't have to be so angry, activated, hurt. I can just, go into a bubble.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost that you don't have to. Uh, it's almost like and I don't know if you feel that or not, Mary, but it's almost like taking control of the interaction just by
Good.
not engaging anymore.
Hmm.
Is
Right.
it, do you feel that?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I do feel powerless and out of control when we're
Yeah,
arguing. I do feel more in
yes,
control when I shut down. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because it feels so powerful. Yeah, it just feels so.
Like safe.
I'm sure. Yeah, they just don't feel like you're being heard and feel pretty powerless in that moment. Probably. What's that like for you, Bob? To hear Mary say that she shuts down because she just wants to because she feels so powerless and she kind of retreats to her safe space into her bubble. Let's move on. How are you? Yeah,
Um,
tell me what.
yeah, it's like really, I guess enlightening for me because I just thought it was just her way to like punish me and just kind of dismiss me. But actually, it doesn't seem to be about me really, or if it is, it's about, her protecting herself from the way I can get.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely, Mary. Yeah, that it's not an intentional thing just to kind of block you out or to, dismiss you or ignore you. It's sort of just to protect herself. Yeah. Yeah. And Mary, what is that like for you to hear that, Bob kind of is you can see some of the reasons why you're shutting down in that moment.
Mhm. Yeah, it feels good at least to feel seen more clearly in that moment. For me, it's just like um, not about hurting him at all or getting back at him. It's about like I just am so overwhelmed. I'm just so hurt, stuck that I just need to go. Like I need to protect myself.
Yeah, that you just need to kind of almost take a pause or kind of uh, just disengage uh, for a little
Mhm.
bit
Right.
and kind of retreat. Yeah, because you just feel so overwhelmed.
Mhm.
Yeah, and yeah, Bob, you have blame as an error, and you guys are doing so great, and you're digging deep, and this is not easy to identify, much less talk about it. And you guys are just doing such a great job, and I can tell that this relationship is important to you. And I just want to just check in with you, Bob, to see, what you've checked off blame, and what are some of the benefits of blaming the other person,
I
blaming
don't.
Mary in this situation? Yeah.
I have no idea. What could possibly be good about blame? I mean, I don't know.
Would it give you, I mean, um I I'm not sure I can hazard a guess. And but you can tell me if that lands or not. Does it
Okay.
um yeah, does it also, is it also protective in some way? And if you when we blame the other person, we don't have to look at our role in making
Mm.
the situation as it is. I mean, does that resonate at
Yeah, that is true. I can definitely see that.
all? And and in terms of values, what would you say, what is a core value that comes up when, for you when you're blaming Mary? Certainly you gave a great example of.
Just keeping, just I want her to be there for me. Um, if I need to talk about something and not shut down. So it kind of like voices my criticisms of, you know, how she's being as a partner.
Yeah, yeah, that you can really tell her how she is being as a partner,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Diane, I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I just wanted to kind of
Mhm.
um, just go over the next steps really quickly. Uh, and I'm just wondering, Bob and Mary, given all of the benefits of these errors, and there are many, and these beautiful values that are reflected in your errors of, you know, wanting to be heard, of wanting to be respected, of accountability, of integrity, why would you want to give them up?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know it's not working how it is, our communication, and so I guess that'd be the reason to give it up. Almost like trying something new.
Yeah, because what you're doing is not working.
Hmm.
And you
Yeah.
said you wanted to feel closer to Mary, and this is certainly not making you feel closer to her. Yeah. How about you,
No.
Mary?
Mhm.
What about you? Why would you want? Why would you want to give up your errors? Because there's so many good benefits and values there.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah, it's hard. Because I'm thinking of how I go to shut down so quickly, and I really don't like that actually. Like I just want to be able to talk things through and even model for our son, for Kenny. I think that was his
Mm.
name. I forgot what I named him.
Kenny.
Terrible.
Yeah.
To model for our son, like let's talk about hard things. Let's stop retreating. And I really don't like to be passive aggressive, like that silent treatment. That's what I've learned from observing my own parents. So I just don't want to continue to do that anymore.
That absolutely makes sense. And so, just jumping out of the role play for a second here, what was that like for you guys, Diane and Dan, to do this?
Yeah, it's it's tough because I want to try to be like this like client that I know is like a real client, and I just kind of feel my own actual relationship resistance coming up and stuff. So it's a little it's kind of interesting to balance it out.
Yeah, what were those pieces of resistance that came up for you, Dan?
um, yeah, definitely not so much the blame one, but the other two, truth and defensiveness.
So truth and defensiveness, yeah.
Yeah, those both really come up, and looking at I mean, I'm thinking this this person um is that's how I'm imagining them too. um Maybe they also blame, but for me that was the harder two to kind of just be in character for. The other thing, for blame, I feel like that was harder. Like when I said I didn't know, I really didn't know. I really was like, and I'm like, I do this with clients. How come I can't think of anything? Um, so that was good what you had said, because that did resonate.
Mhm. Oh, I thought that was great. I thought you were just kind of showing us what could come up with clients because they often are like, I can see this negative impact on my partner. Like truth makes them engage in more truth, and when I blame, it hurts them because we just discussed that, right? How do your errors impact the other person's feelings, and how does it impact their behaviors? And so it's very common when we get paradoxical to actually honor these communication errors that they say, I don't know. How could blame actually be a good thing? Or how could it benefit me or serve me or protect me? And so I thought Indrani did great on just, let me just give you an example and see if it resonates, or, something along those lines is what you were asking him. And so maybe blame is actually your way of, trying to have a voice about what's been hurting. And then Dan was able to connect with, yeah, that's like my way of trying to voice how my partner's coming off, right? So he's trying to hold the partner accountable or hold a mirror up to them when we're blame, we're not intentionally just saying like, I just want to hurt you and beat you down. It's like, I want you to see how you're coming off, and I want you to see how it's impacting me. And so that's what's been hurting. And so the partner can then often feel less shame about if they're blaming, right? At first, I didn't see any good in it, but now I can see blame has been my way of trying to have a voice, trying to hold a mirror up to my partner, trying to let them see from my perspective about how they're hurting me. I value accountability. I value change. A lot of times when we're blaming, it's like, I'm just hoping that you could really see how you're coming off so that we could have some change. And ultimately, I actually value a better connection. I value us connecting and coming off and changing our current patterns, right? So it's almost like I'm wanting all of these good things. I'm just engaging in ways that aren't working in that
Yeah,
process.
and blame sounds to me, in that moment I was thinking of, just came to my head when I was doing the role play, is blame is kind of like saying it's a you problem, and that's what, when I work with clients, I talk a lot about being like a team, like being on the same team. And it kind of goes with that philosophy of, yeah, blame is a major problem because it's kind of destroys your team. So that was something that came up for me, thinking of like, yeah, actually, I can see that there's advantages to that, even though it at first seems like, yeah, how could it be good?
Mm-hmm. Right. Like right now, I
I
don't want to be a team with someone who's hurting me. So I want you to see how you're coming off and hurtful so then that can shift or change, right? And then we could
I
rate
don't
motivation to change. Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly where I was thinking, because yeah, I love what both of you have said, and that is, that it is sort of de-shaming, right? And generally, when we rate motivation at this point, it has already dialed up. Even before we, go to the full motivation script,
Mhm.
because they feel less shame, they can see the value and the reasons why they are doing what they're doing. And so the next step after this would be, to develop that motivation script. And will add the cost of change and develop a motivation script so that I get a complete buy-in, and that this de-shaming, really melts away the resistance that you're doing this for a reason. It's not just to hurt the other person. And after we develop the motivation script, generally the motivation is pretty close to 100. And I, appreciate you guys, and thank you for
Yeah.
being such wonderful patients.
Yes. Thank you so much, Indrani. And when she's talking about the motivation script, we could even look at Dan's response where he said, it's not working. So, this will give us room to try something new. And in the motivation script, we can even look at more of like, why would it be important for you to try something new?
Yeah,
Mm,
exactly. All the reasons to change. Uh,
yeah.
uh, yeah, absolutely.
And then he can verbalize even more like, oh, I want to try something new because not only is this not working, it's painful, and I want us to be closer. I want our family to have more warmth again. And so in that motivation script, as we ask even more deeply, he says, it's not working. I want to try something new. Why would you want that? Why would you want something new? What's important to you in that? What would that mean to have something new? What would that look like? And then we could really see a script with a lot of deep reasons as to why they want change. And of course, we know relapse will come up over and over again, where um, the muscle memory is to blame and to shut down and to be defensive. And that's when the motivation script, with all of their reasons to change and their values, can really begin to make shifts for them when they look at it, read it, or what I'm hearing Andrani has them do is listen to the script, just connect with it, connect with those reasons to change. So, okay. And this gives us 17 more minutes for questions from here. So we can filter through some of the earlier ones and then anything else coming up. we'll work our best to answer them as well. Okay. All right. So I'm trying to look at a system to make this most effective. So maybe looking through the chat, but if you have a question you want to ask, maybe do the raise hand function, and that will put it in order for people who have burning questions as well. So the raise hand function is at the bottom of your screen there. Okay. So looking at the next questions that we haven't answered. Someone's asking, Dr. Susan's asking, how long would this session be? So our couples sessions, really overall, roughly maybe like at least 10 sessions. And each session is, for me, I do an hour and 15 minutes when I work with a couple. And so empathy alone, maybe just one session. And then when we dive into the relationship journal and moment in time, I want us to be able to get through the communication errors and its impact. That may be another hour and 15-minute session. And positive reframing, we may not get through all of it, but that would be a whole session in and of itself, right? Anything different for you, Indrani, on how long these sessions are with the sections that we're going through?
No, I generally, yes, exactly 8 to 10 weeks, and then also, some sessions I will double up on, um, uh, especially the positive reframe session motivation script. I will do a 2 hour, but
Yeah.
that's the general number of hours, between 10 and 15.
Right. And it just really depends too, like how
Yeah,
intense are the couples.
yeah.
Sometimes we may need to fall back to more empathy and connection before we move forward with identifying errors and
Yeah,
kind of working with flexibility and the needs of the couple as well.
exactly.
Christy, is the motivation script part of Dr. Burns's toolkit? No, the motivation script is actually part of the relationship process that I've created. And it's just using the words from voicing the resistance. So considering the powerful benefits of truth and defensiveness, why would you want to change these communication errors? And then when they're saying, I just want to do something different. I want to break the patterns that I've learned from my parents so I could teach my children something different. That's going to go into their motivation script, their reasons of why they want to change. And so when they fall back into those old cycles, they have the script then that reminds them of why they want to change and why is it important. Okay, and I'll do Amy's question from the chat and then I'll do Kevin's, who has his hands up, and just kind of go back and forth. Amy's asking, could you share a little bit more about the development of the motivation script? Is that assigned as homework? Do we ask both partners to create and share it in session? The motivation script is part of what Indrani has demonstrated. So whatever they're voicing as to why they want to change, why do you want to change truth when it's your way of trying to get Dan to see your perspective? And I may say like, well, I do want him to see my perspective, but the way I'm doing it is not working. And so I want real change for us. I'm tired of this cycle. It's been 3 years of literally the exact same conversation happening over and over again throughout the week, right? And so the motivation script is just, I'm typing out everything that they're saying, and then I'm rating how motivated are you to change now, 0 to 100? And then what were the parts in what you said really boosted your motivation to change? And so for me, it's like, I want to break generational patterns. I want actual closeness instead of repeating the same pattern that's not working. I want to model something different for my son. And so in session, I'm highlighting this, and that becomes their motivation script. And yes, it can be homework where they can add to it, but I really want them to see and hear each other's motivations, because that actually boosts the other person's too. It's actually a very moving, important part of the work. Anything else you want to add to that, Indrani?
No, I'm good. This is good.
Okay. Kevin, you've had your hand up, so thank you for patiently waiting. I'd love to hear your question.
Thank you so much. So I'm one part that I'm a little bit confused about. You've got the couple in the session with you,
Mhm.
and you're going to introduce this relationship journal, right? And it sounds like one person volunteers to be the one to choose one conversation that was a problem, and what the other person said, and then what they said. And then I understand you're going through steps 1 through 4 of the relationship journal, and part of that is they're answering the EAR question, was this good or bad communication with that checklist? And then they're looking at the common communication errors and checking off the ones that they noticed in themselves. How did you get to the errors that the other person has? Are they also filling out a relationship journal on the same conversation and noticing their own errors, or are they both filling out the same form together? That part I was a little lost on.
Yeah, good question. And you'll see in Indrani's slides, I think we weren't able to go through it as thoroughly, but one person who volunteers to go first will go from 1 through 4, and then the other person will go next. So each person will have a chance to be in the hot seat to identify their own moment in time, their own errors, and then they'll do 1 through 4 for
Okay.
their moment in time. They can choose the same moment, but it'll be a different, like, what did the other person say and how did you respond? Because they're the ones now identifying their own errors in their response. And then it's their turn to go from 1 through 4. And then we can bring it together
Got
to
it.
see what are the common errors. Oh, we both engage in truth. We both engage in defensiveness. Did that
And just
answer? Did that answer your question, Kevin?
I think so, yeah, because you don't have to both be working on the same
That's right.
exchange. One person chose one, the other one chose the other, but they're going to see similar communication errors. And then
Mhm.
I guess you would also one at a time go through step 5. Is that right? Where they're then using 5 secrets and crafting a revised response.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Is that
Johnny,
true?
sounds
Okay.
like you.
no, I
That's
no, I am smiling because I know that's our next part, but no, I'll let you answer
yeah.
that.
Yeah, and then 5, I review it together with both of them. And then, yes, one person would then look at how could I have disarmed differently? How could I have connected with their feelings? And then the other person gets a chance to revise their own response as well. Yeah. And Kevin, I've kind of done a mix with this. So previously I have done like partner 1 does 1 through 4 and partner 2 does 1 through 4. But I have done it too, like partner 1 does 1 through 4. And then partner 2 also can look at, okay, after step 2, this is what the husband said, right? So let me just clarify. So if Bob volunteered to go first, he then identifies something Mary said on step 1, how he replied on step 2, and his errors. And you could still actually use the same moment. And then Mary can also say, and Mary, how did you reply after Bob's step 2 response? And that could even simplify the process even more. It's the same moment, but she could identify, this is how I replied. And then I realized I was also defensive, hanging on to truth, etc. And so I have tried that, and it seemed to be even a bit more efficient than both going through 1 through 4 separately. So it's an ongoing, changing, moving process, trying out what works, and ultimately, if both are willing to at some point look at their own part and how they're coming off, it's going to change the whole dynamics, right? Because it'll give them insight and empathy on how they impact the other person, and their willingness to change that changes the whole dynamics, and they're both feeling like a team doing this work together. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to just piggyback on that because I think that's so important because the whole process is being done with both in the room. And I will even ask, you know, when we're doing, when one person brings, I'm still doing step 1 through 4 with one person and, with the other, the whole thing with the other. And I will even check with the feeling, the step 2B that I'm sorry, step 1A, with the other person, did he or she capture all your feelings? Did they actually, what were you feeling other feelings, and so there's a input from the other person, and also the errors. Did you were there any other errors? If I'm working with Bob, Mary, did you see any other errors? So that, it becomes a collaborative process. So
Yeah,
I
great
just
point.
wanted,
Yeah, and Johnny's saying when I'm working with one person, it's not like an individual session.
yes,
Make a
no,
point to not forget the other partner, pull in their input, pull in how it impacted them, pull in empathy for the other person as
yeah,
well.
they're together for the duration of the entire, the
For the
process.
whole process. Yeah, they're not left
Whole
hanging
process.
alone in a corner, only
Yeah.
observing. Yeah.
Or separated for that matter, 1 through 4, you come in. It's not like that. They're
Yeah,
present.
exactly. They're there
Yeah.
together observing the process. Yeah. Okay, we probably have time for about 2 more questions, I'm thinking. Others that we can't get to, I'll do my best to answer them in the follow-up email with the recording.
Norma has her hand up. Yeah,
Okay.
I think Norma has her hand.
Okay. There's one in the chat, and then we'll wrap up with Norma. How about that? The next one is Esser's asking, what if someone is having an affair? I think that's a really good question.
Yeah.
At the beginning, I want to make sure that we're doing work with 2 people who really want to make this relationship work. So it's effective for people who we're in this, we're committed to each other. We want to make this work for each other. And if one is already like one foot is out the door, it's a little bit more challenging. I may probably do some individual work, decide if they actually want to make it work for this relationship before we'd even move forward in that process.
Yeah, the decision-making form generally tends to help. For those of you who are who know the toolkit, that I'll use that when it's a situation with like infidelity or something
Yeah.
else.
And I have worked with couples where there has been infidelity, but there's been a lot of regret on the person
Yeah.
who has
Yes.
been unfaithful, and they really want to work through the pain of that. And it can work really well in this process when there's now regret. I want change. I want to commit to my partner. Okay. And then Norma no longer has her hand up, so I'm wondering if she changed her mind.
No, I just put it down since you were gonna
Oh, okay, got it.
read the other one.
Yeah, we'll
So
wrap up with your question.
so this is a little bit of a
Tanya, oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Norma.
Okay, thank you. So going back to the journal, couple of things I think I misinterpreted. I thought the journal would be like a home assignment where they would sort of go back and forth. It sounds like it's a session assignment, right? And then have you noticed that that it could be maybe like triggering? I mean, it may trigger in the session, but is there a recommendation like a continuance of conversation outside of therapy, or leave it for the following session to continue the conversation so that way it doesn't trigger more? What is the recommendation on that?
Yeah, you want to answer that, Indrani?
I'll let you answer.
Okay.
I'll let you answer.
So let me
because
clarify the question. The question is, you see the relationship journal, it's not a homework, it's something you do together in session with the couple. And you're asking, is there a recommendation to continue the conversation at home, or to continue to hold off and to continue in the session? Do I understand the question right?
Yes, so it was like 2 in 1. Yes.
Yeah. I don't often have encouragement to have any conversations until we get to how to have the conversation differently. And so they can choose to continue the conversation if they want, but likely they'll continue in the same patterns until we get to the space where we're teaching them different tools. So I don't ever have like a prescription and like, hey, continue this conversation in between the sessions until we get into the communication training. Then it's like, okay, this week What would be the most helpful for you to practice? I'm going to practice disarming my partner and hearing their truth. I'm going to practice connecting with their feelings and asking questions about it instead of problem solving. Then that would be a specific homework on how to have the conversation differently once we give them the tools on how to set them up for success.
So then is the prescription, this particular conversation stays here and we can continue building on the strategies and any other conversations that you may have, think about like, you know, hearing one another or sort of like the 4 steps, right? Like, am I using some of these tools, kind of recognition, on any other conversation that they do at home? How does that look like?
Yeah, usually it'll be like a prescription of whatever we're working on. And so if we're working on, let's identify your communication errors and its impact on your partner, instead of even like, I don't usually tell them like, don't have any conversations around anything and keep it here because they'll likely continue to have it. But if we're working on right now, identify your errors and how is it likely to impact the other person? It's like a forced empathy exercise. Then the homework could be, let's continue that. So you'll engage in different conversations. And if you could pause for a moment to see, did I have any errors in this moment and how was it likely to impact my partner? That would be more likely the homework for me than anything about the conversation. It's just what we're currently working on, practicing forced empathy, practicing having awareness of how I contribute to the cycle that I don't like. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Great question. Okay. And thank
And there was one
everyone.
quick question and a quick answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that is a same-sex couple. And yes, I have worked with many same-sex couples, and it's exactly the same steps, identical.
Great.
I haven't seen, or even, you know, cultural differences as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I wish I had more experience with it. But I could imagine it would be very similar since I've worked with families and even brothers, same sex, not intimate, but it's the same process that's been really effective for them.
Yeah.
Okay, and then just wrapping up with letting you see the tools, and if you want more information on the tools, this is where there's a lot of resources that you can dive into. So let me swap this. There's tools for external work where they're working to change themselves. And then internal work are sometimes tools we can pull in to help one or the other, even during the couple session, increase their empathy and understanding, decreasing anger for the other person. And then, of course, always appreciate your feedback for this training. So there is this feedback form that you can just access in your slides. And then I'll also email it out when I email the recording as well. For some reason, I can't copy it for right now to post into the chat. I don't know if anyone's able to do that. If you're able to copy and paste it from the slides. Please complete the feedback within a week. That will be a lot easier for giving out CEUs. It keeps the feedback fresh because after every webinar, I've had people like give feedback 2 months later so they can get the CEUs. And that's just really like complicated the process. And so this is why now there's a deadline for the feedback. And if you're wanting the CEUs to complete it within that time, CEUs are only for Oklahoman therapists, but everyone gets 2 TEAM-CBT certification units. Okay. Once you complete the feedback form, a certificate will be automatically sent to you. Make sure you put your name and credentials the way that you want it on your certificate, and that's how it'll show up on there. Really wanting to share about Indrani's consultation group about this process. If you love working with couples or you're thinking about it and you have stuck points, very affordable consultation group that will start in September for Indrani. For an hour and a half, it's $15 per session. Just different ways to discuss it, to get unstuck, to get guidance, feedback. Indrani will also do demos in there, practice for people with each of these steps. And you can click on there to sign up and just fill out a very short 5-question form. That's information about the payment. And these are the podcast episodes you can just look up on any podcast player. Look up episodes 359 and 360. That's the personal work session Indrani did with her daughter. So appreciate you sharing that vulnerable work, Indrani. I love live sessions. They're my favorite on the podcast. And so just listening to the live work and seeing how it comes to life is often very helpful. And the update for that session is 400. And if you're wanting other resources, this is my episode with Dr. Burns. I've put that into the chat on the positive reframing. It also has the 5 additional communication errors on there. And you can even just Google Feeling Good podcast, episode 367, and you'll see all of his show notes with the communication errors. There's a step-by-step guide. There's an online course with this relationship work process, and there's a live course that will start in January as well. And if you have any other questions, feel free to put them on the feedback form, and I answer questions from the chat that we didn't get to and questions on the feedback form on the follow-up email as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time and for being present during the presentation. And just really look forward to connecting with all of you in the future. So thank you so much. It is 12:34, so we'll go
Thank
ahead
you.
and close it up here.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you, everyone.
Thank you very much, guys.
Oh, a lot more new messages, 62 new ones.
Yeah.
So I'll save that for later. Okay.